Welcome. You've joined us for a deep dive into, well, the world of Naruto, and specifically something you flagged from the material you shared, this idea of how power dynamics really shifted, sometimes quite dramatically as the series went on.
Yeah, exactly. We're looking at which characters really seem to, upset the balance.
We want to unpack that. The discussion you sent over ranks the most, let's say, unbalanced power systems in the series.
Right. And it hits on this key question one I think a lot of fans have probably wrestled with. Did characters like Kaguya, Madara, or DMS Kakai, but
Kaguya, Sharingan, Kakashi, yeah.
right, did their just sheer power end up taking away some of the tension? The stakes that made early Naruto so compelling.
That's really the heart of it, because you think back to the start of Naruto, right? It was so much about cleverness, ninja tactics, using your
And
environment.
kunai fights.
Exactly, those intense, grounded fights. But like the source material kind of jokes, it feels like we went from those kunai fights to something, well, a lot more like Dragon Ball beams.
Huh, yeah, that's a good way to put it. So this whole concept of power creep, it's worth digging into, starting with what the source calls the God tier problem.
Okay, so let's kick things off with Kaguya Sutsuki.
Right. The material paints, a pretty clear picture of why she's often seen as the absolute peak of power imbalance.
What stands out?
Well, first off, infinite chakra. That immediately removes a huge factor, right? Stamina management, chakra conservation that was so crucial in earlier fights.
Gone. Just completely out the window.
And then there's her ability to just, hop between dimensions.
Yeah, making her basically untouchable by normal means. How do you even plan to fight that?
Exactly. And don't forget the ash bones.
Oh yeah, the ash bones, that lethal one-touch kill thing.
I mean, strategy kind of goes out the window when one hit means disintegration, doesn't it?
Pretty much. Your source gave her a 0 out of 10 for balance. 0. Arguing her fights were just about overwhelming power, not strategy.
It's hard to argue with that when you list out her abilities. It fundamentally changes the tension, When chakra limits don't matter, it's just about who hits harder.
So after Kaguya, the discussion naturally shifts to Madara Uchiha.
Madara, his power progression is, something else.
How so?
Well, he comes back with Edo Tensei, which is already a massive
Yeah,
advantage.
basically immortal, yeah.
Then he gets the Rinnegan,
Yeah.
and then he busts out the perfect Susanoo. Visually stunning, but just, wow.
And the source made an interesting point about him, didn't it? About how he got so strong.
Yeah, that the narrative almost needed that Zetsu backstab plot twist just to get him off the stage and bring Kaguya in.
Which felt a little convenient, maybe.
Well, it does suggest maybe that his power scaling got a bit out of hand. Like they wrote themselves into a corner and needed something, anything, to shift focus.
Yeah, possibly. Okay, so let's pivot slightly. Another big area your material highlighted was the Sharingan, specifically how its abilities escalated.
Oh, definitely. And the prime example there is Kakashi getting the double Mangekyo Sharingan, DMS Kakashi.
Right, because that whole situation felt like it bent, or maybe even broke, some established rules.
Exactly. Here's Kakashi, not an Uchiha by blood, suddenly rocking not just two Mangekyo,
Which is already rare.
but then manifesting a perfect Susanoo. That's supposed to be, a Uchiha pinnacle technique.
And the abilities themselves were just off the charts,
Perfect Kamui, combining the phasing, the intangibility, with long-range attacks.
making him untouchable and lethal simultaneously.
Plus, the source mentions this implied six-path Samp, like an extra power boost from the Sage of Six Paths lore.
So the verdict in your material was pretty straightforward, wasn't it?
Yeah, basically. Insanely cool. Yes, absolutely. Fair to the established power system? Probably not.
A resounding no, I think was the phrase.
Sounds about right. And it also briefly touched on Obito's Kamui,
What was the point there?
that the main counter to Kamui was another Kamui user, which kind of highlights how potent and self-contained that ability was. Like, only specific hacks could deal with other hacks.
Creates a weird dynamic, yeah. Okay, so we've covered the god tier folks and the Sharingan's wild ride. But the source also looked closely at our main guys, right? Naruto and Sasuke.
Oh, yeah. Their power-ups during the Fourth Greninja War, it's quite the jump from where they started.
Underdogs no more.
Not even close. Think about Naruto. Suddenly he's got seemingly infinite chakra.
Which we just said throws balance off with Kaguya.
Exactly. Then truth-seeking orbs, which are incredibly versatile, nigh indestructible defenses and offense.
It's about healing too, right?
Yep, accelerated healing, and, well, the source mentions the often memed talk no jutsu.
Which Okay, not a combat power per se, but it definitely resolved a lot of
It
conflict.
certainly changed outcomes, yeah.
And Sasuke, he wasn't exactly left in the dust.
No way. He gets the Rinnegan, which unlocks a whole suite of abilities, including that instant teleportation thing.
A Mina Dejikara. Yeah,
Right.
very useful.
Plus, frequent use of Amaterasu, those black flames that don't go out, and his ultimate attack, Intra's Arrow. Just a massive destructive power.
The source really summed up their transformation well, I thought.
Yeah, going from underdogs to basically demigods in one arc, that's rapid escalation.
And to really drive the point home, the material contrasted it with Sakura.
Right. Her improvement being framed as just slightly better punches.
Ouch. But it does highlight the massive gulf that opened up between Naruto and Sasuke and pretty much everyone else.
Definitely shows the disparity in power scaling at that point.
Okay, so before we tackle the big question about narrative impact, your material had a kind of rapid fire round too. Some other characters flagged as significantly unbalanced.
So the dishonorable mentions, let's call them.
Who made the list?
Okay, so we had Hashirama Senju, first Hokage,
Known for.
his insane self-healing, those giant wood-release golems and Buddhas, and his Sage mode, which was apparently even stronger before some later nerfs or reinterpretations.
Gotcha. Who else?
Nagato, through the 6 paths of pain. The idea being he controlled 6 bodies, each with S-rank level abilities.
That's like fighting 6 incredibly powerful ninja at once, all coordinated.
Pretty overwhelming, yeah.
Yeah.
Then, Itachi Chiha.
Always a fan favorite, always controversial power-wise.
Well, the source mentioned his powerful genjutsu, Izanami specifically. Also, the Tetsuka Blade and Yada Mirror with his Susanoo seemingly unbeatable tools.
And the idea of plot armor often comes up with him too, right? Like his abilities always did exactly what was needed.
That's often part of the discussion, yeah. Minato Namikaze, the 4th Hokage.
The yellow flash.
Mostly because of his Flying Thunder God technique.
Yeah.
Just incredible speed. Made him almost impossible to hit.
A nightmare to fight against for sure.
And lastly, a more humorous one, Rock Lee.
Rock Lee. How's he unbalanced?
The suggestion that Drunk Lee solos the verse.
Ah, the drunken fist.
Yeah, it's mostly a joke, but it highlights how even within the system, you could have these weird, specific circumstances leading to unexpected power spikes. Maybe suggesting power isn't always linear.
That's a fun thought. Maybe a nod to determination, sometimes trumping raw power, occasionally.
Perhaps, but mostly an outlier compared to the god-tier stuff we've discussed.
Which brings us right back to that central question we started with, the one the source directly tackles. Did all this power creep these characters with overwhelming abilities? Did it ultimately hurt the story? Did it negatively impact the stakes in Naruto?
Well, the source lays out the yes argument pretty clearly. The idea that fights just became about who had the bigger, more destructive, nuke-like ability.
Moving away from those clever tactical ninja battles from part 1.
Exactly. That's a big point of contention for some fans who loved that earlier style.
But there's a counter-argument presented too, right?
Yeah, the no side. Suggesting that maybe the series was always heading towards these huge world-ending conflicts. That the end game was always meant to be about godlike beings versus humans, or humans ascending to that level.
So a natural progression of the themes, maybe.
That's the argument. And the source tries to find a bit of a middle ground.
How so?
By acknowledging that, yes, maybe the tactical fights of part 1 were kind of lost in the power inflation,
Enough.
but also suggesting that the sequel, Boruto, was going to face challenges anyway, regardless of Naruto's power scaling.
Yeah.
That maybe this shift was somewhat inevitable for a long-running shonen series.
Interesting compromise. So wrapping up this deep dive, we really want to turn it over to you, the listener. Thinking about all this, do you agree with how the source assessed Naruto's power scaling?
Yeah, who did you feel was the most unbalanced character? And maybe more importantly, why? What specifically about their power felt like it broke the scale for you?
And building on that, here's a final thought to chew on. Forget just the broken abilities for a second. How did this huge shift in power, this focus on godlike abilities in the later arcs, how did that affect the themes and the emotional connection for you?
Did it maybe diminish the impact of those earlier struggles, the journeys of these characters from the beginning? Or did it feel like a fitting, epic conclusion, something to really think about as you reflect on the whole Naruto saga?